Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this podcast number, I don't know, of the Corpus Animus podcast. In this episode, we are going to discuss feedback that Training Think Tank gave to the CrossFit Games staff. They asked for our feedback before we went to the CrossFit Games, so we have a bunch of feedback that is about the CrossFit Games, but also about the entire season structure from the Open all the way through the CrossFit Games. We discussed the media, and we got 2 surprise new segments. Stay tuned at the end of the episode.
It's a big responsibility with Brandon not here.
Can you hear me?
To do the kicking off.
I can
see
hear
how he
you.
does.
All right, I'm going to kick us off. In one of the episodes we deleted, I had mentioned that during the games, I had an enormous feeling of gratitude sitting there in the stands, that I kind of looked around and was just kind of overwhelmed that, like, man, how amazing it is that all these people came together and can make anything like this at that high of a level. And then it kind of made all the, not bitching, but the complaints just kind of be like, it put some perspective on it.
Did you have that moment after you had heard complaints already and like it kind of balanced it out, or was it before?
Of the games specifically? No. I just mean in general, of like CrossFit, you know, I feel like.
like leading into the games?
Yeah, they've just been getting their shit pushed on. And they're just sitting there, was just like, man, you know, this is really impressive to be able to do any of this. And I just had that feeling.
I had a similar feeling, and I had apprehension. So to the audience, I guess. So we filmed a podcast, my first one, back after the games to try to reflect on it, which isn't the one that got released about it. And the topic with Brandon became kind of what we're going to talk about in this video instead of my coaching experience. And we felt like, do we need to pile onto this? And I don't know. It's a tough thing because there are things that I think were improved pretty dramatically this year from a lot of that criticism and negativity. Like, I think I talked about it in the last podcast, but the first meeting we had as coaches, they came out and sat down and were like, we are trying to make you feel more welcome here, more part of the process. They seemed to put some emphasis on the judging side of it, but I don't know if that moved in the right direction. And I saw there were like Batman signals all over the place.
All over. It was crazy. Even
judges.
Workers. Yeah,
workers. So there was definitely a cultural shift this year, no matter what. And I was positive about it, especially before the games. I actually sent a note to Dave Gastro's Instagram as it didn't get responded to, but it was more so just a thank you because you realize, I had a talk with Angel, who runs Athlete Control, and there's thousands of volunteers that somebody in the employee structure has to manage and make sure that the right people are in the right place and the equipment gets pulled out from Rogue. I don't know if Rogue does. I don't think Rogue does all of that. I think they use the volunteers also to lay the floor.
Yeah, I imagine they need some manpower from the volunteers.
Yeah. So it's an amazing feat, and it kind of sucks to have to provide criticism, but I also think that the criticism, if done in a proper way, where it's not like, hey, we can do this better, or this person needs to get their job fired. It's just like, hey, these are some issues that maybe you guys don't see from your perspective of the sport.
The other side of
that,
the
kickoff was that way. It was positive.
The good thing about it is they asked for criticism, which I think is just a hugely positive sign. Like, they came out ahead of time. I don't know when Justin actually reached out to you, but even I was talking to him there, and he's like, yes, please, anything that you guys see from your end, we know that you have a different set of eyes and a different lens that you look through things.
You're talking about Justin Berg.
Yeah,
right?
Justin Berg.
Yeah, let us know what you see, and we're going to do a better job of trying to listen and then assimilate that into the years to come.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting because, you know, they have the perspective of they're in the trenches. So they know all the little things. Like, take our jobs, for example. Someone could easily point out something like, a video I made, like, oh, you didn't do blah, blah, blah. But they don't also know all the other things I'm doing and the reasons why I may have done it the way I did. And in the same way, it's like we have our criticisms, but we're not, behind the scenes. So we don't know why they may have left this out or did this way. And maybe if we knew, we'd at least have a different position. So the way we're going to attack it is obviously not knowing that stuff. Yeah. So it might, fall on deaf ears over there when they hear it, because they know all the other side of the coin, but we're still going to say our piece.
Yeah. The document that you guys actually can find, you're going to put somewhere in the description or something, just a link to it.
Yeah. You want to make it public?
Yeah. I'm just going to make this document public. So Justin Berg reached out to me. It was the week before the games, and we got on a call. I was kind of deloading, and everyone was getting tapering, and I was just like, I'm not going to the gym. I'm literally just resting until the game. So I got on a call with him and somebody else that he has involved, that's job is to try to coordinate all of the information from specific people in the CrossFit market, which is like coaches, athletes, I'm assuming some like brands or sponsors, that type of stuff. And they're like, look, we want feedback. And I spent the whole time asking questions like, what do you want feedback on? Because like there's been people out here, like one of my biases that I'll lay out is like, I've had this kind of bottled up, pent up frustration about how things have run for over a decade. Yeah. And like, I worked for James, who is now owns OPEX, who used to be OPT, who was one of the original people that was kind of like one of the early thought leaders of CrossFit. And then they had this black box summit that turned into this crazy thing that Dave Castro flipped out and kicked Greg Everett out of the community and Rob Wolf out of the community. It was this like violent explosion of a thing that took some valuable people in the community out of the community. And that was kind of like, it set the tone for how I operated as a human in the space. I was like, well, I don't want to put my thoughts and ideas, if they're critical, out there too much. And it kind of left this like, okay, I'm just going to deal with whatever comes up. But then now there's like a change in leadership, a change in culture, a change in the way that things are done. And I think it's happening with like all of the culture. Is that like Andrew Hiller probably has had, he talks about semifinals from 2017 and 2018. So there's definitely this kind of like emotional thing, but I don't want that to be the heart of it. Like that is the easiest type of argument that you can make. There's like the ethos, pathos, and logos, and these people that fucking scream and let their frustration out, and they're loud. They get and capture attention of the masses really easy. I don't want to lead with that, even though there is some emotion. So I'm trying to think of it as like, what are the credible skills that we have that we could provide? And then what are the kind of logical ways that we could try to solve the problem? And really my expertise is mostly in coaching. So I'm like, well, what are they going to want from me that is going to provide any insight? So I tried to ask, like, what are their goals as a community? How are they thinking about the sport integration and the actual integration of their level one methodology, and what's their process for creating workouts? And like, I literally spent the whole time asking questions, taking notes. And then I went into the games thinking about how I could influence the sport in a better way with the team of coaches at TTT. So the document that we're going to make public is basically all the notes that we aggregated about the whole season structure, but they told me about it the week before the games, and my whole focus was in the games. So when you go into it, you'll see like which coach this came from, and there's like 20 points in the games from Max, because that's what I was focusing on while trying to serve the athletes, was what could we do in this experience to make it better in the long term for everybody.
So to give context, all the coaches at TTT have chimed in on this.
Yeah, they've all chimed in. Not everybody did chime in, and I think people were busy and doing other things, so it wasn't our culture's top priority. But this kind of document is our thoughts about what we saw as potential problems for the growth of the sport, for how the sport could potentially conflict with the L1 methodology, things that we saw in the testing infrastructure that just didn't seem professionally executed upon. I have some unpopular opinions about the creation of the sport that I think I'd like to, share and put out there. And my thought was like, I'm giving this to HQ because they asked for it, and I was hopeful that they'll integrate it in and weigh it with thoughts of other athletes and other coaches, and then make some decisions. And maybe they listen to 10% of it, maybe they listen to none of it. But my hope is that within this audience, there's going to be athletes, people that run events outside of it, and then maybe the information can just be a way for us to like just improve our whole culture of how we operate the sport and how we think about testing. And so it's just kind of like putting it out there.
You wanted people to kind of
have
critique
ongoing
your
discussions.
critiques.
Yeah, for sure. Critique our critiques, add things that maybe we didn't think about. Or like I talk about how I viewed the media broadcast, because I was, in the warm-up areas, but I'm a weird observer in that I like pay attention to so much of the sport nuance, and I have multiple people in the field that I'm involved in coaching. So
you're not weak. You have a unique perspective.
Yeah. It's not like just somebody who's like, ooh, I'm a fan of CrossFit. Yeah. So I don't even know if that's always a valuable perspective from a media standpoint, but I do know that having this much experience and communal experience in terms of like, you guys have coached everybody at every level, at local comps, in the affiliate, literally we've gotten a lot of insight. So we kind of just wanted to share it.
The other thing that we have, which it's not unique, but everybody that's inside of these walls has skin in the game that wants to see CrossFit succeed as both a methodology for general health and wellness and also as a sport. Like we want things to go well. We want to see this thing grow and prosper and develop over time. We want to see it continue to evolve. So it's not us on the outside saying you did a shit job. Like this is just like, this is worthless and we have to start over. We want to figure out how to improve this together with them over time. And so that's where we're coming from with it. It's unique, I think, in the sense because, like you said, back in the day, the sport was so young that people had a very specific sort of view on how they wanted to grow it. And then contrasting ideas were shot down really quickly, like you said about the Black Box Summit. Yeah. I hope now we've gotten to the point where either people are a little bit more comfortable in their own skin and they see that there's other outside opinions that can help them sort of let this sport and the community grow together. And maybe we can get this discussion rolling with this, hopefully. Yeah.
So this is our way to make it a shit sandwich. Like we made it all the nice stuff and now we get to dig into the criticism and then we'll have a nice, beautiful song montage at the end to sign off.
We actually have 2 new features for this episode. We're going to try some 2 new segments. Heck yeah, heck nah. And
so
then
that's one
segment, and then we'll have Q&A.
Okay.
So stay tuned to the end.
Heck yeah, one segment.
My answer to the segments is heck nah. But we'll give them the right.
Okay, we'll give it a try. Okay. So where are we starting?
Well, in this sheet, we have this organized sort of by stage of the season. So we have a tab for open, for quarterfinals, semifinals, games. We talk about age group stuff. Then we zoom out a little bit and we talk about season structure. I have some thoughts on that as well, which I think what they're going for when they come to the camps and they come to the higher level coaches like yourself, they want to know what it looks like from that perspective. Like what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the things that we can try and get out ahead of going forward. There's some production stuff, which I think that we'll save towards the end, and then just some miscellaneous stuff. So maybe starting all the way at the open makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, look, I am not going to say that anything that's coming out of my mouth was directly said by somebody in that conversation because I probably didn't remember exactly, but I tried to like take note of what was said and write things down so I kind of had context. And one of the things that is clear to anybody that runs a business or clear to the way that if you just look at the outside and say, okay, well, CrossFit's economics need to work for this to play out, is that the open participation is a huge driver of the success of the sport. Yeah. And
it's gone up the last 2 years.
It has. And Eric Rosa's like initial thing before he got fired or stepped down as CEO was that he had a specific number of open participation. So evaluating it from that context, I don't think that the open is doing a good job doing what it needs to do. And some of the points in there are like, Ryan made a good point that there's no incentive structure for affiliates to get all of their members to sign up. Yeah. And if there was, maybe they'd get them to sign up. There'd be a little bit of a kickback to the affiliates and there'd be like a good way to do it. The workouts are oftentimes like, they could, for sorting just general fitness, like just as an example, we have an affiliate here that we write the programming for in Travis's gym. And like, how many people in a regular class and this gym is super, super fit relative to a lot of gyms that I've done, but how many of them can like do double unders properly or do a bar muscle up or do a ring muscle up? So you have these tests that come out and then people that could even be like in the upper half of their gym literally can't even do them and have to do scaled, even though they're doing RX'd workouts in their normal classes. And it creates this like almost like psychological beatdown because even the level for like sorting, you know, Rich Fronings and Noah's and Travis's and these top level people, that has continued to rise and continue to escalate and continue to create these like powerhouses. But that speed of escalation and progress isn't what happens with regular people. Like they might spend their whole CrossFit career trying to get their first muscle up. So the testing infrastructure makes it hard for the normal athletes to do it. The testing is not super well balanced in the open. Like they create a level system, but for me, I did 3 tests that were all pretty heavily gymnasticsly weighted and they were all like 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm like, all right, well, you have no short tests, no gymnastics tests.
Specifically to this season.
Yeah, specifically to this season. But I would think this season was a reflection in some capacities of little changes that made, but there's still enough similarities to other ones that I think it would apply.
Yeah, one question that I would have there is explain to me what the level system is. What's the purpose of it? What's the goal of it? What are they trying to capture with that?
I don't know for sure. The way that I understand it is that in order to professionalize the sport, the same way that you would have like, if you sign up for a marathon and there's a huge number of people that are getting into it and you have flights based on like, okay, these are the people that are going to win. And then they flight people off based on approximate level. That's probably the best way. They have a good name for it, I guess. But in a competition in CrossFit, I think what they're trying to do is that you could like enter Wodapalooza, and then instead of having to see like, am I an intermediate, am I an RX, it's based on some sort of level system.
Gotcha.
To me, being involved in coaching people in a lot of these different things is the skill set that's required to be in the elite, in the RX, in the intermediate, is not always going to be properly sorted by like 3 to 5 tests in the open, especially if like you're looking at, say, like a team CrossFit Games athlete that's bigger. They could potentially not finish that well in the open, but they could be an elite competitor. They could even potentially be elite individuals. They might do poorly on one like classical CrossFit test, and then they win the strength event and they win a monostructural workout. And when the whole fitness thing plays out, that's actually an elite competitor that could have a low level based on the sorting system being the open, especially because a lot of people aren't trying in the open now because
the elite aren't trying.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying, but it's just like a level of focus. It's like, are you really going to try to hit your world-class fitness in the open where you know that the methods for sorting at the top, there's a lot of stuff that like gray area things that could make it really hard to win. There's always somebody that's good at something, and you can really only hold that athletic peak for so long.
It's you don't have to go hard, which has trickle down effects. Cause like if the top dogs aren't going hard or taking it serious, you feel that. Yeah. And then your average gym goer can, not saying that takes all the fun out of it, but if they're poo-pooing it, then
that's kind of where I was going with asking about the level method, because one, I just wasn't familiar with it, to be just completely honest. I don't know what it takes to be a level 10 versus a level 1, or like how you graduate, or is it change year to year? I don't know how any of that works.
Well, that's another thing, is just like transparency. I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
And like what's the feedback infrastructure to like put it out, do the test, get levels, and then be like, okay, this level system isn't working, or it's not optimal. How do we change it over time?
Yeah.
Enforcing these big changes at a time of big changes without clear, hey, this is what we're doing and this is what we're trying to do. And then also the transparency that it's got to be fluid, because we're a sport that's in an exponential growth phase. So it's going to change from year to year. So anyways, basically all of that to say, I think the open needs restructuring. And I think I've been thinking about that as well. Like, we don't sign up for all the coaches don't sign up for the open. And I was thinking like, you know what, next year, I'm just going to pay to enroll all of the people that work for TTT in the open. They can do it or not,
but just to beat me.
Yeah. Well, no, just more so just to support it. But the fact that that's what I have to do means that there's something wrong with the test, because all of us still do some kind of CrossFit. But like for me, my bias right now is like, I play some golf, I do martial arts, and I've been bodybuilding. And part of the reason I did that is because like the amount of jumping and the amount of core compression work and the amount of linear things that play out in CrossFit, for me, based on my injury profile, my age, my body weight, they just beat me up. And it's like, all right, well, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, at least right now. Maybe I would jump into something that would be a classical open style workout. But if the open workout, for example, was like, hey, we're going to do a 1 rep max back squat as one test, a 2K row as another test, and then there's going to be one test with like burpees and thrusters or something like that, it poses a different structural risk to people that aren't in that top tier of fitness. Because if you've been around this sport for long enough, what's the like number one thing that keeps people out? It's a joint. It's like, oh, my knees can't take all of it. My back can't take all of it. My shoulder, people's elbows get flared up. Sometimes it's hormonal related, but there's a lot of reps that are required to be good at this sport. And it's a lot of reps of really linear stuff, which is why movement is just such an important part of being good at the sport.
Yeah. In my mind, I see the open as almost being like a weird crossroads in a way. Like, what is the purpose of it? And I don't know how much they've clarified this. And maybe this gets back to Chris's point in terms of they have a clear vision, it just hasn't been communicated. But from my perspective, I don't know what the purpose of it is. Is it meant to actually, like you said, separate the top 10% to be able to move on and qualify for quarterfinals? Or is it meant to try and drive community engagement in something that's bigger than themselves, right? To do something that takes them out of their comfort zone a little bit, to try and do different. That's when I was thinking about the level method. I was like, oh, maybe that's how they're trying to drive more engagement. Because when I look at open signups, that to me is almost like an indirect marker of community engagement, which then feeds back in down the other lines to say, hey, as that open registration number drives up, we're probably going to see more participation and attendance at semifinals and then at the games, because now we know we've got these people hooked into what CrossFit is. What competition looks like, doing the same workouts as the Tia Claire Toomey's, as the Justin Medeiros. Like, that's how they're sort of like trying to picture it. But I don't know if that's really what they're doing with it. I don't know if it's really like the Open back in the day was the start of the competition season, but now is it still that? Or is it really like we're trying to get as many people as possible to take part in this huge like community worldwide event?
I think that's where you get into the tricky part of connecting the sport with the brand, in the sense that like, I don't think if you started the sport from scratch, you would say, hey, let's do it this way.
Yeah. Well,
but it's just trickled down from how we've always done it, because it was part of affiliates and all that.
Yeah.
But you would never start it that way.
It's also a trickle down effect from just the simple fact that it's a business. It's the only way that they actually like generate a
That's
huge
what I mean.
source of
the sport's tied to this other thing.
But I mean, my number one kind of thought process to this, and I know part of the reason why they wouldn't want to do this is because they want their highest profile athletes doing the Open, because it looks good for the community if they're the people that everyone's aspiring to be like are involved in it.
So what they do is they mandate it by saying it's the start of your season.
Yeah, but it's bullshit, and everybody knows that that's not like, it's not doing anything. It's not properly regulated, and like they can say that it's a great test and it sorts anything, but it doesn't mean anything. They barely get paid anything to win it. There's zero incentive for them to do it other than they're forced to do it. I think you could fix that by pulling it out of the sport and then providing some really, really awesome incentives for the Open. If you finish top 5 in the world in the Open, you get an automatic bid to the CrossFit Games. If you finish top 20 in the world, you get paid something. If you demo a workout for the community, you get automatic compensation. Like, there are ways to create incentive structures to get those people involved in it. And if they're involved in it and the major goal is not that they want to win it, they'll probably also be awesome workers and participants in it, because there's just less pressure. It's just fucking working out. It's like training for them. And they'll probably love doing it. And there also will be less of the Andrew Hiller shit. Like, I looked at my score on the leaderboard and I'm like, all right, well, I know in the quarterfinals, there were like hundreds of errors that you could just like visibly see, or judging things that didn't make sense. I've been watching people do open workouts for so long, and I've been to boxes and watched people work out. Oftentimes they don't have judges. They completely miscount reps. They're not missing standards. You're talking about thousands of people on every workout, on every leaderboard.
And you don't have to submit a video, correct?
Yeah. And like, you just,
you know, in the same way social media has like troll farms you hear about, like to fuck with people. Like, what if there was leaderboard, like people just paid $20 a pop to get all these accounts just to, I'm not saying that's happening.
Yeah, I know.
But it could get there.
Yeah. So I just,
hey, by the way, your chair's low. You look like,
I thought so. I was like, is he a freaking giant?
I walked over and looked at this camera. I was like, you look tiny.
I thought I raised it.
Oh, there he is.
I raised
You're such a big boy.
Thank you. Wagging my tail like my dog. Oh, shit. Okay, so basically, I think that if this is the primary thing for the CrossFit Games, like, it just needs to be fixed. My vote, if I had a vote, or if somebody was like, Max, you're in charge of this structure, is just let's remove it from the sport, make it a community participation thing. Incentivize the affiliates to be able to participate it, make it easier to sign up for. Like, the Open back in the day being 5 weeks was probably the worst thing in the world. Like, it was so long. People are doing the same test multiple times. Everybody's losing fitness. Everybody's anxious and stressed. It really makes the community experience of it horrible. Maybe not if you're not trying to be competitive and you're just like, ooh, we're doing a workout, but for the actual athletes, it's a really hard way to.
Especially for people like you who have multiple people you're looking after.
Yeah.
You get to like week 4 and everybody's just ready to be done.
Yeah. And then I think even just for a casual participant who is signing up for a 3-week competition, like it's hard to get people to go to the gym 2 times a week, 3 times a week. Just keep them focused for like, hey, you're going to come in and do something very hard and it's going to be on the global leaderboard where your name is going to be up there and you're going to have to be here. You're going to have to be here 3 weeks in a row to do it. And, you know, potentially film your workouts or, you know, like, I just think that whole way of doing it should be changed where if the goal is to get affiliate participation, make all of the open structure very easily structured into a class format, where equipment selection is very easy. The actual workouts, potentially put like multiple tests into the same week, like 20 minutes to find a back squat, 10 minutes, 500 meter row. And then the last 10 minutes is a Metcon of burpees and double unders or something like that.
So our goal with this whole conversation is to try and keep it as solution oriented as possible. Yeah. So let's say that we go that route. Let's say that, all right, our solution right now between Max and Adam is let's actually dissociate the open from the competition season. Let's make the open more of a community engagement driver and let's have the athletes go over here and have their separate CrossFit Games season. If we go that route and we need to come up with a structure for the open where we are trying to drive as much participation and as much engagement and fulfillment as possible because we want people to go there and be like, yeah, I'm looking forward to the open. Like I've been training for this. I think that you can take away unknown and unknowable now. I think now we can go back to Chris's old idea of there's a set of tests. And we also know how does CrossFit measure fitness? It's not just constantly varied functional movements of high intensity. They have 10 general skills, right? They have these things laid out, aspects of fitness, and then you release those ahead of time and you repeat them year after year with maybe like 1 or 2 changes for a CrossFit based test. Now these people know what they're training for. The gym owners and the affiliate owners know the tests that are coming up. They know how to structure things.
That would be so huge. You could get people so excited every year to get
now you know, like instead of just saying, well, we don't really know if you got better because the test got changed. These people are just, they don't care about unknown and unknowable. Yeah. They want to know that what they're doing in the gym is paying off and their back squat got better or their 500 meter row got faster. Now what you did is you took so much uncertainty out of that and you probably drove up recurring fulfillment and engagement over the course of the season.
And the whole community is doing it at the same time. That'd be powerful.
Yeah. I think even in that, I think you get high level athletes who just want to engage with that, but they're not forced to. I think that there's still people in there who are like, yeah, I want to do this with my gym now because this is cool.
Yeah. And the tests aren't going to be as, like, it's just not the human psyche. It needs uncertainty, I think, sometimes to like create engagement and anxiety, but too much of it and it burns people out. Yeah. And I feel like there needs to be some known variables. And if you look at all sports, that's kind of what happens is that you have this like structuring of there's known variables, like in a fight, you might do 3 5-minute rounds. The unknown variables is you might get kicked in the face, right?
Yeah, like, 10 seconds in.
We need basketball. We need the 140 characters, and now we can craft our tweet.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. So I think that would be good. Actually, you stole my unpopular opinion is that I was thinking that we need to kind of get rid of that whole thing as part of the way that the sport is done, or
say the words.
Unknown and unknowable. Get rid of that. Just make it known and knowable. Because right now I feel like it's almost a game of how much do you know and how much is knowable. And the lines of even like this is more of a games thing. So I'll get to there.
Should we save it?
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll save it. Yeah. So what's to conclude the open?
That was my thought on the, like, I want to know first, what's the purpose of the open in their eyes? Yeah. Maybe it's right. Maybe right now it's scratching the itch that they want. I don't know. For me, it just seems like it's stuck in this weird crossroad where it's trying to serve as stage 1 of the competition season. And it's also trying to be a driver for community engagement. And I think it's honestly missing the mark on both. If you've got 300,000 people competing and it's barely up from 3 years ago before the pandemic happened, we need to fix that. We need to get more people involved with it. And I think one, you can incentivize or at least try and encourage more affiliates to do so by having a set of tests that's known ahead of time, that they can organize their gym around, that they can organize their training around, that their members are going to get excited about and not feel like they have to be beat down.
Think of all the media you could build for all that too. Like you could build so much cool media in the build up to those workouts, around specific workouts, around the whole weekend. And Make it like a Super Bowl type event for all the affiliate members.
And there was no, like we said before, there was no reason for the higher level athletes to have to compete in the open as a start. They did that to try and drive community engagement, but now I think you scratch that itch from somewhere else and you let them have their season start at quarterfinals, which then
but why not? If you wanted to just create incentives, say if you finish in the top 5, you go to the games. You don't even have to do the season.
You can put it in there, but just not have it be mandatory. Have it be voluntary. You can make the decision now if you want, if you see value there, or if you're ready to do it.
Yeah.
But I also think that when you think about the big picture stuff, season outline at the end, figuring out how to shrink that down as much as possible and make it as predictable as possible is also going to be a goal. And that helps to start to solve that issue. Yeah.
I had a point that I thought was a good one and now I lost it. My brain went off on a tangent.
Brains do that.
Yeah.
No, so that was my goal or my thought about the open. Again, I think that it comes back to just what it is that they're trying to solve, but maybe they have other thoughts about that. But
yeah, so I think that kind of concludes everything open wise, right? And on the document, is there anything we didn't cover?
There's talks in here about the level system. Ryan brought up team versus individual, but I think also if you take out the competition side of it, then that doesn't become an issue as much.
I did have a final point. This could be another unpopular one. So CrossFit has this huge health initiative. I don't know that much about it, but I know that it's a huge part of the world. Yeah, huge part of their business. They're certifying doctors. They're creating these health networks. There's a lot going into that, a lot of investment going into it. And also, if you just pay attention to how economies work, software and healthcare are two huge industries. So if we had people that came in from the private equity world and they came in from the tech world and they're putting all this money into CrossFit, you know that they're going to be looking for a return on that money. And generally, if people are looking for returns, they're going to go to the places that are getting the best returns on a most consistent basis. So a huge investment is going to go into that. I think that one of the things that I've wanted to do for a long period of time was collect data on what's happening long-term with people that are doing consistent training. Yeah. And if you want to get that data, like Peter Attia has been on a bunch of podcasts. He's a really famous doctor in the space on health and fitness. Like some of the barometers of fitness that they use are very simple. It's like, can you hang on a bar for 2 minutes? The strength tests, it's like a very low level of strength that you have to be able to create. And then VO2 max, which is like basically in the CrossFit world, let's just say you used a very simple rowing test. It's just like the same test, a lot of reps, very low tension, 20 plus minutes of work.
Compare watts to body weight.
Yeah, something like that. Some sort of test that you could use. Those are the things that are predicting health. And I think about it sometimes, like I play golf and it's a very different community than CrossFit. Like a lot of times I'll play with people and they're like, why do you do golf and CrossFit? I feel like CrossFitters don't like golf. They're not patient. Their emotions are too hot to play this game. They get bored very easily. And I look at like some of the bodies of the people that are older and they're, basically their form of fitness is like they're walking, the ones that actually walk when they play the game. They walk 6 miles when they play. They might play 2 or 3 rounds.
You're going to tie this back into the open somehow?
I am.
Okay.
I am. I will. Yeah. And then they swing a freaking light club in one direction thousands of times. Like that's their form of fitness. So the equivalent like in the gym would be if you came into the gym and you did like walking on the treadmill and you did like Palloff presses only in one direction all the time.
3 times a week.
3 times a week. It's a pretty easy way to train. And a lot of those people are in their 70s, 80s, little health issues and pretty healthy. Like I think the standard of exercise fitness that you need to maintain long-term health is not the extreme top level racing fitness. I don't think those two things are the same. So if we have the open as our community participation thing, and some of the tests I think the tests are way too complicated. Like I don't think people that can do handstand walking and muscle ups and all these top level performance things, this will play out over time. I don't have the answer, but my gut instinct says that those don't correlate to your general health at all. It's just a really high level of sport specific fitness that at some point is going to wane when your explosiveness and athleticism and when you just start to get older, right? People try to combat it with testosterone and stuff. But I think if we're going to make that the distinction for the open, to tie it back, as being separated is that those tests should be very easily accessible and not needed to be scaled that much except for extreme populations.
Yeah.
So have a general fitness test where only 3% of people can even do it the way that it's written means that the test is too extreme to actually correlate to health. So I think you could tie your health initiative to the open. You could get data on people, like maybe even part of the intake process is you can get $10 off if you submit your blood panels every year. And like, then they have their way of monetizing that and tying it into healthcare and proving that CrossFit as a system works for health. But like the way that it's tested right now is it's more part of the sport.
I would almost say maybe do both, because you'd have to then at the affiliate level distinct your members from people who want fitness and people who want to compete, people who are playing a game.
But why wouldn't you just then be the quarterfinals? The quarterfinals is the time where those people can just straight. So you take away the top 10% thing. You just say, hey, the quarterfinals is the first stage of the CrossFit Games. You enter, it's more expensive. And because it's more expensive, now you get better judging and better standards, and you have more revenue that's going in for the people that actually do care about being a proper sport. I know for sure that all of the athletes that I coach, if you said, hey, you can make it less expensive, but it means that it's not going to be really moderated properly. No one's going to judge. No one's going to look at the videos, and like,
you don't even have to submit a video.
Yeah. Like it's just going to kind of be sketchy unless you're in the top 100, which means that the people that are in 100th place are getting affected by thousands of other people based on the workouts, like where you need to finish at an aggregate level. So that's option one. Or option two is you can pay 3 times more. You can pay, $150 to get into it. And we're going to provide judges, and we're going to make sure that standards come out ahead of time, that everybody's equipment structure in the gyms will be easily accessible for people. You're just going to kind of like solve those problems. I'm pretty sure that people would be happy to pay that extra money to take away.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, I think you solve that problem by just splitting them and making it like professional sport, community engagement.
Yeah. But what we're trying to get out of community engagement in the open, to get back to what you were saying, I think, is we want something that's easily accessible, both in terms of complexity of tests and also just something that is simple to wrap their heads around from like a gym owner perspective, right? We want something that's going to be correlatable over time with health metrics, right? To show that, hey, if you compare doing CrossFit and this definition of CrossFit, not the sport, this definition of CrossFit to something else that you could do that might otherwise be termed a healthy lifestyle. This is going to set you up more to have better mortality, better quality of life, better joint health over time. That's what you want. And then you're driving your own engagement through that by being able to separate that, because when you get them together, the waters get all muddy.
Yeah. And also, like, I'm not I guess it's just a criticism of how a lot of people do CrossFit. So a lot of people do CrossFit based on how Dave Castro shaped the sport, which meant like as a thing, hand-eye coordination or foot-eye coordination or catching or throwing was a very, very low priority for everybody participating in the sport or in the thing. And a lot of times if you watch CrossFitters, just like casual CrossFitters play basketball, or casual CrossFitters throw a ball, like when they put it or competitive ones throw a ball when they put it in the CrossFit
I've seen
Games.
competitive CrossFitters throw a ball.
And I think there are things that you could weave into the testing body that would almost be like fun, but also ways to give your community a way to train these things that are highly valuable, like the actual neural speed to be able to sight, catch things, your reflex speed. Those are things that are really important to train, they would be shitty to put into a testing body for a sport, but like even a juggling test or like some sort of hand speed test or some sort of throwing test that you could integrate into it. Yeah. But I just think you can get more creative with finding things to put into that actually improve the overall 10 general skills and general fitness things that the ideology is centered on, that maybe got lost with the sport taking that over.
Yeah, I don't know. I think to push back on that a little bit, I would say remove that from the testing body, because it's hard for me to picture a way to normalize that in a testing setup, but maybe try and encourage affiliates to ensure that they are testing the 10 general skills a little bit more in their daily training. Because then you can see setting up fun little games out there, like when you're warming up, like doing ball catches or like overhead tosses and stuff like that. I think when you think about what it takes to get outside of the gym, outside of just bilateral squat patterns all the time, working on coordination, working on accuracy, that to me is like, do that in the classes. Do that in the classes on a daily basis. But don't put it in,
because then it becomes less and it becomes less accessible.
And then you're complicating things a little bit more.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. I think we crushed all that. Move on to quarterfinals.
Quarterfinals. Sure. Yeah. So Mike's point here was equipment access and layout. So one of the big things that we run into every single year with the online stage of the season is trying to figure out how to take 30 athletes through a series of tests, right? Part of that is the floor space that we have to work with, but part of that is having mandated equipment layouts that don't take into account training camps, right? Yeah. So if you are one person who's on your own at an affiliate, who has a judge, who has access to the entire gym all day long, the quarterfinals, I think, are okay.
But they're also, even for that, I've seen videos of people's quarterfinals where it's happening in a class and like your video,
somebody walks in front.
People are, So I don't think it's optimal in really any capacity.
I don't think it's optimal either. So a couple of things that we can think about.
Definitely not for people like us. Was your point?
Definitely
this
not.
This is us talking from our perspective. Our perspective is it is really, really hard to organize an on-site training environment that has a group of, what do we have, 35?
40, I think.
40?
Yeah.
Maybe go into that for a second so people can understand why.
Yeah, I think we have in a video before, but just as an example, the first test was the first test that everyone wanted to do was the CrossFit Total. It's a 30-minute test that you have to lay out. The average person in our environment is using like over 300 pounds if you aggregate the girls and the guys for every lift. So you just think like how many plates you need, and to get all three of those things with a rack, bar space, and then have enough space with a camera, we essentially in about 8,000 square foot of floor space, we could only set up 8 people to go at one time with one warm-up area, which meant that we had 5 heats of 30 minutes with, at the end of that 30 minutes, people are freaking sweating on the floor. The plates are all discombobulated. You got to get the cameras off the floor, get the next one in. So you're talking about probably 15 to 20 minutes mandatory between each heat, which means each heat takes about 50 minutes. So you have 50 minutes times 5 heats to get through, and that's 250 minutes is 4 hours and 10 minutes. And we got the workouts at 3:00. So that takes us from 3:00 to 7:10 if everything happened immediately at the time. 3, But the actual specific standards come out at 3:00. They're super complicated. You got to put tape on the bars for things for width, and
first you got to read the standards
which is basically a book, like multiple things for every workout that you have to go through. And you're talking about orchestrating like this massively stressful thing to get people in. And then people are pissed off. They're like, I was ready to go 4 hours ago. I've been waiting here for 2 hours. And like the whole community experience is horrible. All the coaches are exhausted because they've been judging for multiple heats in a row. It's a hard thing. And then we have people in our remote community. They're like, hey, we want to come participate in quarterfinals. And I'm like, nope. I would love that though. I would love it if we could be like,
no.
Yeah. If you have a good incentive structure or a good structure put in place, it's like, these are the workouts. This is a structure that you need. This is how long each heat time is going to be able to need.
And again, part of that is the unknowable.
Yeah.
Like if we just had it all ahead of time, maybe we could have got ahead of it a little bit.
Just to get back to the solution for that instance in and of itself, if they give us the workouts and the floor plans ahead of time, keep it to the side passwords, right? To make sure that people don't do it ahead of time or take multiple times. If that's what they want, then what that allows us to do is allows us to get a schedule laid out for exactly when things are going to happen, stay a little bit more on time with things, and also be able to have time to read through the standards and not have stupid little things fall through the cracks, right? The distance from the plates to the wall and the handstand push-ups, having the bar taped on the bench press, little things in the standards that we're trying to rush through because we know our time is so short to get through those things.
Yeah. And like, I don't understand if you're going to give the floor plans ahead of time, they only come out 3 days ahead of time. So it's not like super advantage. But if you're going to do that, why not also say, hey, these are all the movements and then these are all the movement standards? Because every year it comes out. This was another bone to pick that I'm going to try not to be too ranty, but kind of like just a way that I think about how CrossFit had operated a little bit in the past that has chafed me over the years. I lost my train of thought because I wanted to tell that story, but I was talking about the quarterfinals. Help me get me back on track.
Well, I mean, I can keep talking about quarterfinals and we can see if it comes back to you.
No, it had to do with, it has to do with basically if you get a subset of standards and then an athlete doesn't meet it, our culture in general will be like, they're cheating. This is so freaking overly complicated and so poorly communicated in such short of a period of time that it sets all of us up for failure. And then we're publicly criticizing the people that are almost rushing to have to get to do it. the thing that I was upset about was, I'm still kind of grumpy about this, but Noah doesn't care, so I'm not going to drag him into it. But in the CrossFit Games that had the hammer in it, I forgot what it was, but they made a video about it. And Matt Fraser, Matt Fraser was like, "Oh, I found out I took third, and then I found out these other two people were cheating, and one of those people was George Sanchez, and one of them was Noah." And they were saying that they were hitting the hammer and dragging the thing, which when you go back and look at it, it kind of does look like they're doing that, but it was portrayed in our thing that goes out to highlight the athletes, and you're making one of the people that is one of the higher profile people who has a reputation for being super nice, who just won Spirit of the Games now, but this was 5 years ago and I knew who Noah was then. You're making him look like a cheating villain in it without addressing the fact that your standards were poorly communicated and you had judges on the floor that weren't no-repping. So why are you shitting on the athlete and not taking personal responsibility?
Well, to be fair, Fraser shit on it. They allowed the shit talk to be in their documentary.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
and then they constructed the...
What do you call them? Dinkle nuts or something?
Yeah, I don't know what it was. But somebody is in charge of... Somebody in the overall thing of CrossFit is approving that. And that was their media that they put out. They literally owned that media.
Yeah.
So
but it's more of a reflection on their...
on the way that the process is done. So I feel like that same type of thing is part of the reason why the Hiller stuff is happening now, is because we need better infrastructure to set the competitions up so that people are set up for success. They know what to do. They're not in places where fuck, this shuttle is so long, and then I got to be over there for this movement, and I can't get this camera lined up properly to get everything in place, but I got to get it done.
That's the crazy thing, especially when you're setting up multiple people.
Yeah. And doing it with masters athletes is hilarious. I suck with technology relatively, but some of them, you can't, they don't know how to open YouTube. For example. They're just learning how to do this shit. So I don't know. I think just better communication. I think one of the things in there with Kyle, transparency. Yeah, and I think that solves the whole thing. I think if you separate it from the open, say this is the first stage, and just be transparent. What are we testing? Why are we testing it? What do the tests need to look like? How many bodies are you going to need? What's the actual floor space that you need to be able to do it? They've done in the virtual games before, they've done running. If they want to include things like that, I think it's cool. I think it'd be cool to take people out of the box or do other things, but just
let us know ahead of time.
Yeah. Give us months in advance to find parks or things that we need to do, so that way the people aren't scrambling. And then I've heard a rumor that one of the things that they're trying to do is set the quarterfinals up so that people can be in training camps, and that this could be these massive things. But I can tell you from experience, we tried to do it with 40, which was really hard. We've had camps in our space of 120, so we can operate people through here.
Yeah.
But it needs to be tight and it needs to be organized well in advance. We have the workouts done weeks in ahead of time. We go out, we look at the floor plans, the time, how much rest time do we need between it?
Yeah.
They need to do all those calculations to be able to share with affiliates, and then maybe give something that says hey, based on the way this is, you can get X number of people per 1,000 square feet through in a normal time frame.
Yeah.
And then that sets the affiliates up to know okay, I can host X number of people here. This is the floor space and the equipment that I need to have.
Yeah. I think the big thing quarterfinals wise, to get back to that note, is the unknown and unknowable, I think, is coming back to bite them in the butt. They wait until the last minute to release workouts, movement standards, floor plans, and it leaves all of us scrambling, and then it makes everybody look bad. I just think nobody wins from that setup. You got tied too strong to this idea of unknown and unknowable and releasing workouts with such a short time frame.
Yeah.
And then you have in execution, it just all falls apart, especially for somebody like us who's trying to do something with a community outlet, who have all these athletes. And it's not just 40 athletes who are just the quarterfinals is my last stage.
They're all trying to go to semifinals. A huge
percentage of them is thinking they're going to try and go to semifinals. That's the turning point of their whole season is dependent on that.
Should we open that can of worms now?
What?
Just go ahead and get the whole full-blown rant for unknown and unknowable out of the way?
I think we should kill it overall, or that there needs to be limits to it. And it can't be an excuse of something didn't go right or something.
Let's defend why we want to kill it.
Well, I think we've already kind of
that's just it at the quarterfinal stage.
Yeah, but it happens at every level. Like the CrossFit Games, the jump rope thing, for example. It's okay, we're going to bring out this new jump rope skill, but we're going to announce it to you at 3:00. We're going to give you no equipment, even though it's a different movement. And there's also going to be videos of people online with people that are then quoted in publications that are training people on how to do these skills months before the CrossFit Games. It's like the lines of communications about the fairness and equity for the athlete that I've had over the course of my 10 years at the Games. I've had 4 things that have been leaked to me well in advance.
So there we go. That's bullet number
sources.
1. Unknown and unknowable creates potential for leaks that get to certain people and not others.
And it's not That's potential. Huge. I know that it happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've had to tell multiple people, if you get something like this in the past, just please don't tell me again, because I just don't want to know. And we've had a lot of internal discussions about how I'm supposed to deal with that professionally. Should I leak it to the community because I think it's unfair that some people know?
I think that's how we should do it.
Yeah, just from now on, anytime
we just post it on our YouTube. It's possible. Hey, we got it. So now you got it.
Yeah. But again, it's just like there's a clear power infrastructure. There's athletes that are sponsored by the people that are literally putting on the event. The likelihood that there's not somebody's best friend or training partner or somebody that's part of somebody's.
Think of all the camera guys, all the helpers, everybody involved.
Yeah.
And just, I bet you a leak starts off innocent enough.
Yeah. And it's like, it just starts out as a little hint or something like that.
Like maybe you should touch the sandbag.
Yeah. People suck at keeping secrets, and big secrets, especially, people don't want to hold on to them. They want to tell their closest people. And if like you're dedicating your whole life to something and you're my best friend and you're about to go somewhere and I know that I can give you a competitive advantage, and all that's going to happen is I'm violating my NDA, which they're never going to be able to know that that you're the person, that I'm the person that leaked it to you if you don't tell. It's like there's just such a low incentive. That's very
direct. I think it's probably more indirect. It's like for instance, we have a guy on site
people aren't thinking that.
Yeah. Like a cameraman goes films and he just tells his wife, and his wife tells friend that she trains with. Friends, I think it happens more like that.
Not maliciously.
It's not. I mean, certainly it probably has happened the way you just laid it out, but I think it's probably more so the other, where it's just like people can't keep it. They thought they were telling someone who would never tell. That didn't matter, and now here we are.
So that's one, is fairness and equity. It just is. It's not happening, and I think it's silly. The second is that it's making athletes that are they are the people that CrossFit is pretty much using to highlight the effectiveness of their methodology and how amazing they are. And I agree. I think the people that are doing what they're doing at the CrossFit Games, and I've been involved with professional athletes in fighting, baseball, basketball, CrossFit, like maybe some of those at a very low level, but pretty impressive athletes. What a CrossFit athlete can do still on a yearly basis blows my mind. How many skills they learn at such a high level, how focused they are, how much discomfort they can tolerate on a day-to-day basis, how robust their hormones are, how quick they are at learning skills. And then we get to this thing that's supposed to be the pinnacle of highlighting them, and we give them movements that they've never practiced with shitty standards and make them upset and set them up for failure on game day and publicize it on a live stream to people that don't even understand that. So they're just watching our highest level athletes look silly on film. And I don't think that is good for the sport in any capacity. So I think it kills viewership.
Yeah, I'm going to try and push back on that. I'm not completely sold on this position. This is me actually trying to take the stance of somebody who's inside of CrossFit HQ, whether it be Bosman or Berg or anybody else. Why did they do that? There was a decision that was made. They know what they're doing. They've done it before. They did it before with pegboards. They did it before with some of the other movements that they throw out at the last minute. It's a point of pride for them, if I'm being real honest. That's what it seems to be. Yeah. So why are they doing that? What I've heard is this is what's growing the sport. This is what's pushing the envelope to make these athletes evolve and change over time. If that's really the point of focus, that still gets served and honored if you give that to them 2 weeks ahead of time.
That's exactly. But that's also
or any other solution that's still not that's right before the
So what I want to hear is why did you do that? Okay, I'm not judgmental. Just tell me why it had to be done that way, because I think that we can still serve that purpose and not make these people look like idiots. But if we don't make them look like idiots, we drive up engagement. We drive up people who are curious. We drive up people whose minds we just blew because they saw these athletes on CBS doing these things. Instead of looking like idiots.
So it sounds like what they're trying to do is demonstrate how quickly people can adapt to a new stimulus. Right? See how quickly they could learn something.
Really see who can. But it ends up, like, the reason why in testing implementation it doesn't always play out that way is because, just for example, that handstand push-up standard that they put out was kind of hard to see and enforce properly. There's nothing
Wall
that your head
facing?
is, wall facing handstand push-ups. So in order to get like a really good vantage point, you'd have to be kneeling like right in front of that line and trying to look.
Yeah.
Tons of people have like big poofy hair that sticks above that. That's hanging down in front of it. A lot of the judges are mindful of where they're supposed to stand. So they're like off to the side. Some of them are standing up. Some of them are kind of like on a knee. There's not a uniform position. I'm guessing that means that they weren't trained to be able to observe that. Everybody's putting out these videos of like wall facing handstand push-up is great. This is a great test. Dave Durante put one, and they're all barefoot when they're doing them. I'm like, yeah, this is a movement that's been really used in gymnastics. Also a sport where people don't wear shoes that have rubber on them that's going to stick to a plexiglass and then say, hey, keep your feet in plantar flexion. And then people's rubber's catching or they're walking up the wall like this. And I'm like, this is just implementation improperly of an unknown and unknowable skill in my opinion, where I made this like rant, let's kill the unknown and unknowable. There's part of that sport that I really love. It's just, let's not make the unknown and unknowable instantaneous before the competition and not think through the implementation of, hey, this movement is going to be tested in athletes in a high pressure situation at speed. So like at least give them a day or two or even a proper warm up for it. Like not, hey, this is your workout. These are the standards. We're going to rush through it and not talk about the nuance and get frustrated with you if you guys are asking too many questions because we're on these tight, fast timelines to get these briefed to you really quick, rush you to the warm-up area. And guess what? Heat 1 has to go in 20 minutes and none of the shit that you need to warm up is in there yet, but it's going to be coming. And it shows up before Heat 3 of the, like, to me, that's like, you're not implementing unknown and unknowable. You're just like shooting yourself in the foot.
Hold on, let's focus it back down a second. So we were talking about athletes like to Adam's point, you had said that part of, you would want to ask them what's their purpose. And it seems like they're attached to the idea of having something every year that comes out that pushes the community forward. So a pegboard, now we're all doing them. Now we're great. And now we're moving to legless pegboards. And,
great. I love
that's something they love doing. But so what we're trying to say is that with the unknown and unknowable, maybe just shorten the timeline, but you could even do it like on a Friday night, announce it that night when they go to bed and leave the warm up and leave it in the next day.
Yeah. Leave it in the warm up area.
You still get what or what they might be looking for to Adam's point, but also not making it right there because then it causes another problem, which is the judging, which is what you were kind of alluding to.
Yeah, I think the judging is the hardest part.
Yeah, no, it's by far. I don't know anybody who's a judge at that level, but it has to be so frustrating for them. And
I do.
To say like, all right, hey guys, here's this new movement. We're going to go out there in 30 minutes, and you're going to be on camera with these high level athletes who are competing for hundreds of thousands of dollars,
getting criticized,
and
now.
You're the one who's going to be getting criticized. So we're going to do unknown and unknowable for you too.
Yeah.
How good? Like, what does that do for the sport? I don't think it does anything for the sport.
Yeah. If there was a big unknowable plaque right here that was breakable, I would fucking punch through it and just end.
Well, let's go through it. Let's go through the opposite side. Where has the juice been worth the squeeze? Because that's been my point. Is like when I say kill it, I've always said, well, where has the unknown and unknowable played out where the juice was really worth the squeeze? It's always kind of cool because you get to get the announcement and that's always fun. Like, ooh, what are they going to announce?
Yeah.
But you'd have that same emotion if they did it
2 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah. Whenever, you know, as far back as you might want to take it, you'd still be excited to hear what's coming. So
I'd be hard pressed to picture an instance where the same emotion of, oh, that was cool, unknown and unknowable, look at what we can do now. That wouldn't still be accomplished by giving that to them a week ahead of time.
Right.
And
So
it cleans up all the problems.
Can we think of one or two where it really was worth the squeeze?
Well, the thing that I think has been worth the squeeze is the pushing of the boundaries. Like the fact that they did a marathon row or that they did legless pegboards. The fact that they just put these in, that is the unknown and unknowable aspect that I think is actually good for our culture.
But we can modify that to our point.
Yeah, you can modify it. It's just, it doesn't need to happen the second before. And I also feel like the whole process could be a lot better if we said, hey, you're going to come in, we have to be there on Sunday. Then we go through all this fitting and media stuff and all of that. Everybody goes at different times. It takes a whole day. You come in and Monday there's like coaches meetings in one place and athletes meetings in another place. But if we just said, hey, on Sunday, when you come in, this 5-hour block is going to be for you to get all your stuff and do your media. Then there's going to be a 1-hour break. And then we're going to do another 5-hour block. Before that, you're going to get a full digital brief of every movement that's going to be in this competition, every workout, the full workout, drone footage of a field if we're going to use it that explains very clearly, this is what the test looks like, here's where the lanes are, and go through literally everything, just workout by workout, like a 10, 15 minute thing. And there's 15 tests. It means you got to watch 150 minutes of shit before this meeting. And you come in and you have a multiple hour long session where you go through, is anything not clear about this? Then there wouldn't be the need for briefings and meetings and all of this shit that gets orchestrated logistically at the competition, because it's literally already done. We've already told everybody everything. Then maybe there can be like a quick 5-minute athlete touch point if there's any changes that needed to be made that are articulated very clearly ahead of time. This is the change that was made and why. This year, like the rope being changed in the alpaca workout literally happened like 2 minutes before the first heat went out. So literally they are all warming up for their grip. And I'm talking to them about like, hey, it's going to be slippery. That is going to probably bottleneck a lot of people having to do the down climbs on a potentially wet rope. Like it's going to be way slower. And then like 2 minutes before it's like, all right, now it's not going to be. So it's like, is that necessary for a professional sport for that to happen? Could there have been rain contingencies around that? I think allowing us to be more known and unknowable just makes it so that those problems just don't exist ahead of time. And they can be reviewed by people like, hey, 2 weeks ahead of time, they get this. A week before that, there's a rough draft review by the players committee, specific coaches, and somebody can just like, I know for sure there was a huge problem at the CrossFit Games that I could have avoided had I listened to one discussion about event 1. Because the second me and you were standing right next to each other, I was standing behind Bosman and Justin Berg, and they were like, athletes have to count their own thing. And I was like, did they just say that? And my gut instinct was like, let me just tell them they should change that right now. Like, there's no way that's a good idea. It was like, to me, one of the most predictable things that was going to go wrong in the face of I couldn't have imagined that there was a whole team of people that let that go.
That's one of the ones where, like, if you're trying to do devil's advocate, I don't even understand the other position. There's no way in hell that makes sense from any perspective to have athletes count their own laps.
Yeah.
Have a chip timer placed on the lap that's going to count the laps for them. Have them come back through the stadium so the judge can count their laps. Change that.
I don't get it.
There's no reason for that.
Well, the one thing I was trying to put myself in somebody's perspective, if they were trying to defend it, would be saying that mental acuity and your ability to process and count is part of a fitness test.
Maybe.
However, if you do that, you need to know that some people are going to fail that and forget or make a mistake or cheat, and to know what your penalty is, and then not enforce a penalty that theoretically was actually a gift to the athletes.
Yeah.
Most people's slowest lap was probably their last lap, like especially if they were blown up.
Yeah.
And especially if they were falling off the back of the pack. Now, 2 of the people were near the lead, so maybe not. But let's say as they were finishing lap 4, they were trying to catch up with the leaders and they blew themselves up and they were like cramping up in their legs and they came in.
Planned.
Theoretically, they got their slowest lap, which was lap number 4. And if they had finished, it would have been slower than their slower lap. And they actually got a faster time by cheating the workout, even if it wasn't purposeful. I'm like, that's just bad implementation. It's not a proper test. It's not thinking through some of the basics of human psychology when they're competing at that level of performance. And it's not influencing fairness and equity to the people that did the test properly, that counted properly.
Do you think there was an argument at HQ? Like, because surely they all sat and talked about it. Do you think there was some guys like you that raised their hand and was like, hey, bro, nah?
I have no idea.
I doubt it. I don't understand how that could have slipped through the cracks.
Because even you saying that about mental acuity, it's such a stretch. Like, you're trying to create something.
That kind of shit frustrates the fuck out of me, where it's like, you just propose this to 3 people who have, any common sense, and they would instantly point that out. Like you said, slip through the cracks. Like, I don't understand shit like that.
Yeah.
The other side of that you got back to before is transparency. And I think the transparency side of things, it can go back to quarterfinals, which is where we left off, in terms of what are the penalties when something does go wrong. Yeah. And this is not saying that people are doing it on purpose. You just gave an example of how somebody could strategize and game plan that penalty ahead of time because it wasn't well thought out. If you share ahead of time what the penalty structure is, like what each rep is worth in a pistol workout inside of quarterfinals, what each rep is worth for a GHD setup, what each lap is worth for a games workout. Now we all know, and hopefully we can give you feedback to say, hey, the slowest bike lap is not a good penalty. Yeah. That is just not good. You need to take the slowest and then add 5 more minutes on top of that. Yeah. Now it's a penalty that's actually going to discourage people from doing that.
Yeah, because you don't want people to game the penalty.
Yeah, which is what will happen if they're shitty penalties. Yes. I mean, but that's part of the reason why, like, so I talked to Brent, Fikowski, and Patrick Vellner probably more than I ever have in my life at the CrossFit Games, which I found interesting.
You mean this CrossFit Games?
Yeah, this CrossFit Games.
I was like, where else did you see him?
At this CrossFit Games. And they kind of orchestrated the first players union, I think the PFAA or whatever it's called, and were big advocates of it as it was happening through the COVID situation. And now CrossFit created an internal players union type thing, but it was all also, I think, I don't know for sure. I don't know everybody that's on it. Somebody told me James Hobart. I don't know if he's on it because I also know he's involved with CrossFit Affiliate Program. He was a great athlete. He's a great mover. He's a great teacher. He seems like a great person. I don't know anything about him, but I think it's a problem if you have somebody that has been in the belly of the beast for 10 years as the advocate for the players. I feel like people that have been playing the game for a long period of time, multiple different people, and having one group that speaks for the athletes, not having, oh no, we have our internal CrossFit players group that tells us what they think, and then we have an external CrossFit players group. There's no CrossFit coaches group or coaches. Like, there's multiple coaches I talked to that have been there coaching for like 10 years and people that have really good opinions that people like, when we all are like, is that really what's going on right now? And like, we've all just dealt with it for so long, but there's a lot of knowledge, I think, in that group of people that is coaching CrossFit Games athletes, not called coaches because they teach seminars at CrossFit or because they write curriculum for CrossFit, but they're actually on the other side of the equation while it's happening that could provide feedback that aren't, well, until now, I guess, part of the feedback process. Now, I guess the question is how much feedback is being heard. And like, I sent this to Justin Berg and he got back to me and he was like, wow, I really appreciate the depth of this. This is really easy to work with and it's organized. And he forwarded it on to 2 other people. Who knows what's taken, but the fact that we put this spreadsheet together in a week and some coaches didn't even have time to look through it and sent it, and it's a lot, means that there's probably a lot of other really good coaches that aren't providing feedback because they haven't been heard before. And it's just like the whole process, I think, needs to be better built with all the parties at place. Like, people could have a seat at the table where we're not making any power decisions, but we're at least making sure that some decisions are being made that aren't, I don't know, just obviously not in the best interest of like testing accuracy. It's like, used to be called the test of the fittest on earth. It's like, if it's not a good test, if you walk in, for example, and like the lanes are uneven, somebody had to run farther to their hands or their shoulder to overhead than somebody else. And they were like, well, in testing, it didn't matter. I'm like, well, in testing with your athletes who didn't qualify for the CrossFit Games, who are not losing potentially tens of thousands of dollars by places, who are not here actually competing, it didn't matter. But
they really said it didn't matter. Those words came out of their mouth.
Yeah, something along that. I had what was put there in quotes in there, like meaning when I took my notes that I actually heard that. But sometimes if I do that, I'm paraphrasing the quote. But I'm like, how does this happen? It's like they were finishing their runs with 30 seconds left, which means, and if you picked your bar up off of your rack before the time, you could actually hit it after. Yeah. Travis got every single round. He lifted the bar up right before the time and hit his last one after the time window. Theoretically, if he was in a farther lane and he had another, 2 seconds in every station, maybe that meant that rep could have happened at the 52 second mark, and then he could have picked the last one up at the time and got an extra 3 reps, which could have been like 7 places on the leaderboard. So like, it does matter, and it should matter, and it should never happen where there's an automatic advantage to the arbitrariness of where you're put in your lane.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take that and let's try and run with that. How do we fix that issue? Because one, I think that when say that you're Bosman and you're trying to come up with your testing battery and you have a subset of athletes that did not make the games, right? And you might only have 2 or 3 of them, because what you're trying to do is you're also trying to clamp down on any potential leaks. You don't want this out there. You don't want to have 10 people come in who barely missed out, who are as good as you can get to be able to test these.
Yeah.
You got 1 or 2. How do you explore where those margins are? How close do they have to be before you can say it doesn't matter, or, oh shit, this does matter if we give somebody a 2-second lead because their platform's a little bit closer?
Yeah.
What's the solution to that?
Well, the solution to that for that test is
put
just
the sprint bag further for the people who's.
Yeah. It's just, it should never happen. Like, you should never automatically be at a disadvantage at the start of a workout, in my opinion. Like, you should always be thinking through that. And it plays out in certain workouts, like the workout that you had to take your bike out. So that first workout, 75 toes to bar is not a huge separator for the elitist athletes at the start of the CrossFit Games, which meant that a lot of them are finishing at the same time. If you happen to be in the lane where your bike was right next to the exit, and then you're on the complete opposite end and your bike is out here, you could potentially finish your toes to bar, get out, and now you're just bottlenecked because the exit's so tight over here by all 39 other athletes to try to get through.
This athlete over here could have done their toes to bar probably 20 to 25 seconds slower than that athlete over there, and then they're ahead going on the bike.
Yeah. So how do you solve for that? I'm not entirely sure, but I think my solution would be that there should be somebody on staff, and this would require the unknown and unknowable to be dead. And it would need to be like, okay, the workouts are in cement. They're written in stone, and we know exactly what they are a month or 3 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
Then we have a testing accuracy specialist, somebody that is coming in and has a complete diagram of the floor and goes through the workouts and tries to analyze lane by lane. Is there a potential conflict of how this is going to play out for one specific lane? If there's not somebody out there that just looks at a lane and says, okay, well, they're all starting to run here and they're all ending their run right here, and this is lane 1 and this is lane 2, and nobody's like, lane 2's farther away. It's like, it's
Dude,
that's literally, I can't.
That's how I feel about The Last Jedi. I'm like, you put this fucking movie in front of 3 nerds and they all fix it, and Luke Skywalker's not a bitch.
But what did we get back to? Like, where I was trying to push you with that, what did we get back to? Kill the unknown and unknowable, because that's what killed them there.
Yeah.
That's what killed them there.
Yeah.
They were trying to keep things behind a curtain by only releasing it to 1 or 2 people and only having one person run through it at a time, and then they set things up afterwards trying to keep it all secret.
Yeah.
If you release that to everybody, or if you release it to like maybe one person and then a couple of different coaches and say like, hey, poke some holes in this for me, because I want this to be a good, fair test. If you want it to be a good, fair test, get lots of opinions on it.
Yeah. I don't want to do this now, but there was a part of me at some point that was so frustrated by the whole way that the situation was happening. And I was like, I could do this better. Like,
for which part?
Just the whole thing. Like, try to literally put on a CrossFit Games competitor. I have zero interest in doing that right now.
The whole competition?
Just a competition, like an actual competition. And one of the things that I was trying to solve while I was thinking is, how do I create tests that it actually is appropriate and you don't get into a situation where like you overprescribed it for the best in the world. Like an example is like that sandbag workout. It ended up kind of being the best and worst test I've ever seen at the CrossFit Games. Best because it was like kind of cool to watch how fucking heavy those bags they could pick up. Bad because it took 4 hours. It was just like, oh God, like everybody got through the 300-pound bag. All the girls got to the 190 bag. Like, and there was so much time that it took to kind of get up to that. And maybe that's what you want, but I feel like golf. Yeah.
No,
I mean, like golf gets hated on because it's a really long, slow sport. Tennis is kind of like another thing where you need like CrossFit is like, man, there's going to be 5 workouts to watch on a Saturday and one of them is going to be 4 hours long. I just don't think that's a good look for like sport observation. So how do you try to solve that? How do you get the best in the world to test the workouts? There's one idea I had, which was also about kill the unknown and unknowable, is have a group of world-class people, like people that could potentially be in the competition that are testing for you.
Contingent like demo team?
like an off-season demo team. Like, let's say for me, I had access to Travis and Noah. I'm
right.
You guys are going to
who didn't make it, but the people who will make it.
Got
it.
They're testing, but instead of them testing and them getting to see, is we publicize all the testing. So like, hey, Travis is doing this workout as part of his training today.
Yeah.
It might be a CrossFit Games workout. It might not be a CrossFit Games workout, but everybody knows.
Yeah.
And that way you can actually start utilizing the best people in the world at a time that they could actually test it. You might not get it perfect with every test still, but I think you just reduce your margin of error. Like there could be tests like the cross under double under thing. And if you want to say like, okay, part of the unknown and unknowable, we're putting confines on it. There's going to be one thing every year that comes out that nobody's ever done or trained, and there's going to be no information on it. One person's going to keep it in secrecy. They're going to do no testing on it, but they're still going to give it to you on Sunday. So you have a couple days to practice. But I think that the sport can succeed at the highest level without the unknown and unknowable parameters at all. Like I think we can just kind of let go of it and say, hey, it's part of the ideology that we want the chipper hopper type thing. And maybe there's ways to put it in community events or benchmarks or, something like, but I just don't think that it should now be the center point of the sport. Cause to me, it's making the CrossFit Games just less appealing from a viewership perspective. Athletes get frustrated that it's not done properly. Viewers, like I listened to something that said people want to watch the winners. And
we'll get to,
don't cover that.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but on a different media note. So we'll cover that when we get to our new heck yeah, heck nah segment.
Okay.
But for now, on another media note, I think if you killed the unknown and unknowable, something that would be really cool is whatever time frame in the year that you announce things. So I know we've said a couple different things here, 2 weeks ahead of time. My gut would say make it even earlier, but whenever you did that, think of all the media you could make to hype up those workouts.
Oh, practicing the workouts.
All the media where you watch a UFC fight and they do all the building to the fight. Yeah. You kind of do that, but with the workouts, you do all this building, you make mystique around the workout. And now the whole community is like, shit, this workout's crazy. I can't wait to see it unfold. And you're going to know, and that serves you. Now I go into the games excited to watch the event rather than, it was cool to hear it announced for 20 seconds and now it's boring.
Yeah. And I think the announcers then too know ahead of time.
They can tell a story better.
I could get on the phone with Tommy and Sean and be like, hey, we had 5 athletes tested. I think this is going to be the point in the workout that's really going to be the separator. Yeah. I think this is about how long this initial pace is going to be. Here are some people that
Bananza
you could, here are some people
heading into it.
Yeah. I agree. I think the whole infrastructure gets better if we get rid of that. But I think that really comes down to like operational organization. That the HQ has done something a specific way for.
You mean home office?
Home office. Sorry. Well, it's called home office now.
I've heard people say that. Now. Like they tried to get away from HQ.
Yeah. So CrossFit as an organization for the sport has done something a pretty specific way for the last 10 or 15 years, and now there's like this battle of change and there's this clash of culture and there's this old guard and new guard. And I think there needs to be leadership that comes out that says like, this is the direction that we're going with the sport. Here are the decisions we're making. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is the team of people. This is the stream of communication. And I say this, like, I literally did this for myself. Like I go through this constructive criticism on myself on a regular basis. What can I do better? What can I do better next season? How did I fail this season? How did I not do my best job at the CrossFit Games? I feel like every corporate organization, I'm guessing, has to have this process. And I'm hoping as they go through this process, these are some of the things that they're uncovering. And if they're not, hopefully they watch this or read this document that I sent. And if not that, I hope somebody listens to this that is involved with it and can at least bring some of these things up to find the people that need to be found, to just fix some of the issues that I think preclude growth and also just like emotional enjoyment. Like anybody who wins something is going to feel good about how it went. Like the people that got onto Laura Horvath is probably pretty happy that the rope climb. I mean, I don't, she's pretty good at rope climb. She was a climber, so that's not a good example. But I know Ricky Garrard, for example, wasn't so happy that they pulled the legless rope climb out of it. So there's always going to be that, like, do we have to listen to this because this is just somebody who's frustrated that it didn't go their way? Or is this like a valid concern? But I think there's a lot more
I think you'd be saying this shit if all your people podiumed.
I think I would. Yeah. I had these same things when Noah took second.
I don't think any of the criticisms around placement for us. I think the criticisms for us are about what we talked about earlier. The
motivation for the
and also athlete experience. Like we coach athletes in the quarterfinals, in the semifinals. I've heard so many of the complaints from the inside that don't get verbalized, and I think that just, I don't know, it just needs to get addressed.
Well, the hope would be that the new guard who's in charge of CrossFit is going to have their ears open, who's going to understand that there are other people who have skin in the game, who are invested in the growth and development of CrossFit as a sport, and then hopefully hear those opinions and integrate them in.
Yeah. So
anything else from the games? Because we kind of like lobbed in on the unknowable, but was there anything specific about
there were a lot of points that I had, like the double unders and how they were put in there, the lanes not being organized appropriately, the workout number 1, not having rain contingencies, explaining that workouts were changing right before, not having equipment that needed to be in the warm-up area.
Let me rephrase. Anything we want to go into on depth? Adam, this is your first year coaching, well, not first year, but second year coaching an individual. Anything stick out to you?
No, I think that we talked about most of it. The scoring adjustments we talked about. The other things that I had were more about like the media side of things. And I don't know if you're ready to get into that yet, because one of the hang on, not the heck yeah. You just see how much you sat up. It's my time.
I've been waiting.
What I care about a lot in terms of what I think is going to help grow the sport is I get back to engagement, and I get back to wanting to have people who are excited to participate, who are also excited to watch. And one, you're going to need to draw on people who are already within the CrossFit sort of like ecosystem, and you're also going to need to draw on other people. Yeah. So when we talk about media and we talk about production, what we need to create more of a spectacle. When we highlight our athletes, we don't want to be highlighting them in a sense of like, look at this, like, look at all these really fit athletes and they can't even jump rope. This is hilarious. Yeah. Instead, it's like, how can we make this as exciting as possible? How can we try and make this to the point where somebody who likes watching NBA with their friends on Fridays or going to their friend's house to watch football on Sundays, they want to do the same thing with semifinals. Yeah. Or if I show the semifinals to one of my buddies who knows nothing about CrossFit, he's going to get hooked as a result of that. Yeah. That's what I care about a little bit more. And that's what I want to think about when it comes to the production of the media. Yeah. Because as coaches, we have criticisms about it in terms of show us all the athletes, because we want to see what our athlete is doing.
That's
if we're not there. We're going to get there eventually. I'm not. Sit back down in your chair. But the other side of it is having a media experience that can be consumed by some that's not familiar with the sport. Yeah. That on the shoulder to overhead in the shuttle, who's winning?
Oh my gosh.
Who even knows who's winning right now? On even the hat trick one, who's winning? Yeah. The athletes don't even know out there. This is something where you thought you maybe you gave really good thought into the test, the lane stipulations aside and everything. Maybe you love that test and you want to have it out there. You also need to think about how that test is going to play out both in person, because the people there watching had no idea, the athletes had no idea, and then people who are new to the sport who tried to watch that thing either online or on CBS or whatever else had no freaking idea who was winning, who's doing anything. They don't. If you don't show somebody a scoreboard, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're going to completely lose interest.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there needs to be some sort of way to organize every workout as a race, and that there's a clear viewership strategy for the race.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's part of it.
Oh, did we really?
We're moving
I thought that I was staying away from it.
No. All right. Anything else you had about media that wasn't? Let's just dive in.
Yeah.
Give me
heck.
Heck.
Let's jump into Heck Yeah, Heck Nah, where I bring up some topical news from inside and outside of the community and get the reactions with the Heck Yeah, Heck Yeah, Heck Yeah,
or maybe
Heck No, Heck No, Heck No, Heck Yeah, Heck Yeah, Heck Yeah, Heck No, Heck No, Heck No.
Just
all right, and welcome to our first initial inaugural segment of Heck Yeah, Heck Nah, where I'm going to get these guys' opinions on some topical things. One of which we're going to dive right in is about the media. So recently on look at the TV here, we had our friend Lauren. She interviewed from Morning Chalk Up. She interviewed Mike Roth, who is part of the broadcast team. And he says, I'm just going to go ahead and play it. Here's her question.
Will they hear this?
Thinking about the camera positions, a common complaint that some viewers have each year is CrossFit's live stream doesn't show the full floor. kind of talk about why the broadcast team decides to focus in on some of the leaders or maybe the fan favorites rather than maybe doing like a split screen where you see the whole floor and a close-up of some of the leaders at the
Good
time.
question, Lauren.
Yeah.
All right. And then they make a little shitty joke for a second and they laugh about it. So I'm going to skip to where he actually starts his answer,
I like shitty jokes.
which is right here.
Why we cover the leaders is because by and large, you're covering an event. People want to see who's leading. If you watch a golf tournament, right? Once those leaders go off on the first hole, you're going to see them and anybody else in contention, right? Unless somebody gets a hole in one or chips in out of the sand, you're not going to see the guy in 38th place because I don't want to say they haven't earned that broadcast time, but the vast majority of the people watching are interested in who's going to win. And
that's pretty much, it goes on a little more, but so heck yeah or heck nah
To what,
on
the
his
question or
reason,
the answer?
on his reasoning for not showing the full field.
Ugh.
You got to answer.
Yeah. And not defend why.
Heck no.
Heck no.
No, heck no.
And why?
Yeah. Well, all right. A couple of things. First off, they don't even do that. They don't even just show the leaders.
That's why that was going to be a point number one.
I'm completely biased. She won an event at the games.
Yeah.
She was winning this event. She was way
You're talking
ahead.
about Alexis,
I'm talking
your
about
athlete.
Alexis
Yeah.
Raptis
Yeah.
from the games last
Echo
year.
Press.
Echo Press. She is a full
biased
I'm so
observer. You're
biased,
such
but
a
I'm going to
biased
fucking roll with it because
observer.
I was on fire
Right.
when I went back and actually watched that. I was like, oh, I'm so excited to watch it. And then she gets to the second station and the
They
camera,
say Tia's in the lead
the
too.
camera is on the middle lanes.
Yeah.
She's winning the workout. And even the announcers in the stadium were talking about the two in the middle.
Yeah.
And listen, this is fine. I know that as you're trying to grow the sport, you're also trying to create narratives that people are going to want to sink their teeth into. But that is not like what he just said wasn't even done out there. It wasn't even executed in practice. You weren't showing the leaders. You were showing the people who you thought were going to be in the lead.
Yeah. So
Max,
when he
heck yeah or heck nah?
Well, heck nah, for sure. A part of it was, I agree with the fact that many observers want to watch the best in the world. Michael Jordan, like Tiger Woods. He talked about golf. That's a big irony that he used golf.
Well, that's my contention. Is that what you're about to dig into?
Well, first, there is something as a Tiger effect, and if he is in contention, the viewership is like 1,000 times more. But I don't think that is always true in CrossFit. And I think that we can use some things as proxies. Like there's people that have Instagram followings that are well above people that have performed at a really high level at the CrossFit Games multiple times, or people that have won the like Noah has more followers, for example, than Justin Medeiros, even though Justin Medeiros has won the games twice now, which means that there could potentially be more people that want to watch Noah do CrossFit than Justin Medeiros. Just as a counter.
As soon as that mullet comes off, I think is. I'm just kidding. I love the mullet.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily agree with it being true in CrossFit. And I also don't think that as they're doing it, let's say the premise was true. He's like, okay, yes, people want to watch the people in contention. He said people in contention. That means that in every race, you should be watching the people in contention, which means like after the first 2 minutes of a 10-minute Metcon, there's usually like 3 to 5 people that are in contention of that. And there's usually 1 to 2 people on the broadcast, especially the way that they have it is like the camera's this close. It's like seeing the spit come out of your face and seeing your butt crack if your shorts came out. Like it's super close. And it's not you and somebody else showing the rep speed differences,
there we go.
Seeing who's in the lead.
That's it. So his little example, let me pause real quick. I don't know Mike. I've never met him at these things. But I think the broadcast team does a great job. They do so much right that back to our earlier point, we're criticizing, but they do like how they managed, we don't know the restraints that they have, and like just getting that capital run done, that was amazing that they even put that together. So they do a lot of things right, but his example here was golf. And I'm like, no, that's wrong because that would be like CrossFit Games and everybody does the workout one at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he's missing here is that this is a racing sport.
Yeah.
And you don't go watch the Olympics and they're doing their, the sprint race and it's just zoomed in on freaking Usain Bolt.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one because sport why? Because during a race, you want to see how much he's kicking his ass.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to watch the race. You want to see the people that are in contention.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't get why we can't just have a full view, even if we paid for it separately.
Yeah. But I think that the whole view, like to me, I think I've talked to Tommy before. I've talked to Sean before. I like them a lot. I like them as people. I've had conversations with them in person. I've done podcasts with them. They've been super professional. There's phrases and sayings that Sean has done that I think the way that he articulates them lined up with the actual thing that's playing out in real time and has created sound bites for the sport that have really been crazy and tremendous and valuable and grown the sport. But I think that from an announcer perspective, they are set up for failure in the same way from the unknown and unknowable thing. They don't know, hey, this is going to be the race. This is where the checkpoints of all the things are going to be. Like, you know, in the capital race, Travis is running away with his heat. We don't know who's behind him, how far behind they are, who, like all of the other potential people in the race. We basically watched 20 minutes of Travis do a workout. It could have been on our YouTube channel as a freaking demo video where they're criticizing his
I give
running.
them slack though, because that's like a crazy ass thing that they probably had to try to film.
Yeah, I agree with that. But if it's like, okay,
I would not use that workout to pick.
but is the
bones.
Tour de France not a crazy ass thing?
But that's
where
all they're
going
doing.
up and
That's
through
all they're
the-
doing. They're not then coming back. And do you see what I'm saying? This is one of those, like, we
okay.
got to
All right.
put ourselves in their shoes type deal.
Well, I think even if I was in their shoes, I would say like somebody in the testing body should be like, hey, we should have checkpoints at every mile in the run. Chip timers should go off. That should display on the leaderboard so you know Travis is in the lead. In that one, they had girls and guys going, right? There was 20 and 20.
Bottom 20.
Yeah.
it
So
was
immediate
so- top 20 of
graphics
each.
on the
yeah,
screen.
so
Yeah.
we had no idea where the girls were in that. And like, because they were way farther behind. So I feel like there's so many aspects of that I'm like, all right, it might have been a challenging thing to make it like media driven and cool. And maybe the camera angle has to be just Travis in the lead, but the way it's displayed on the live stream, I don't think should be that way if you're trying to create a sport.
Yeah. And is that stuff solvable by taking out the unknown and unknowable, even with the media team? Hey,
That's
we're
what
gonna,
I think.
We're going to give
Yeah.
you a couple weeks
I
notice about.
I bet you that broadcast team they're listening to this convo about unknown killing it, and they're like, oh yes, oh please.
Yeah, well, think
I don't
about,
know.
like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
said, think about how many different locations they had to go and set up their truck at just for that event. And then you got the swim event and you got North Park and then there's teams going over. Like, I just take all of it out and give that to them ahead of time so that they can create and like construct this better viewer experience.
Well, I
for
guess on
everybody.
some level they probably do get leaks so they can plan. But but point taken.
Yeah. So before you go back to another media or another question of the heck not, I wanted to talk about, so I think that the person constructing the CrossFit Games, Adrian Bosman, should write the workouts based on creating a spectacle. Some things that I feel like didn't come out spectacle wise this year, the swim event. The swim was not scored separately. They were kind of slow going to it. It was hard to see where calories on the ski were.
Yeah.
So that was a really difficult thing to play out the spectacle of a race. The finale of the CrossFit Games ended with 30 bar muscle ups, which took it away from a spectacle. It became like kind of a cool thing that there was an aggressive buy-in, kind of a race on the thrusters.
It was
and then
a
it was
dud of a
like,
finale.
yeah, who can do 30 muscle ups, and there's going to be separation. People are finishing 30 seconds past. It's like rep schemes and all of that stuff should be, in my eyes, kind of built for fan experience. Then there's either somebody else on the team or a group of people that challenge the test for testing accuracy. Are you actually going through the model of unknown and unknowable, testing fitness? Are all the lanes appropriate? Like, and have there be multiple roles in that thing? Because I think that right now there's like the ideology of CrossFit that they're trying to balance. There's the media experience that they're trying to balance. There's the what's been done in the past that they're trying to balance.
Yeah,
and
they're
there's
trying
not-
to create a new identity for themselves too. It's his first year.
and it's not really that clear from my vantage point.
Yeah. Well, the other thought on that side of things is this is his first year. Maybe that he looked at that same thing, was like, on paper, that was a great test. I see how that played out. Maybe that wasn't the best from a viewer perspective. Maybe it wasn't the best from an athlete perspective. Maybe I'm going to try and learn from this going forward. I think that we've never seen that many different kinds of interval style workouts, right? Like there was the shuttled overhead, there was the hat trick, there was a swim one.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. Like, it was interesting. It was new. It was novel, but it was hard to follow.
So here's an example. Like, I haven't really put much thought into this, but the thought came into my head. You have the same structure of the swim workout. 8 cal ski, 10 cal ski, 12, 14, and then 16, 18 in the last two, something like that. And you swam 50 and then you did that. Now let's change the entire structure of the workout and say, now you're going to ski erg 8 cals and then you're going to sprint 50 and your rest time is going to be until the top of the next minute. But that interval is timed. And that time from every single interval aggregates. And as it aggregates, you could potentially, if you wanted to make it so that every single round was a race and you know who was in the lead, you could say, okay, this person is 2 seconds behind. And you could actually have them have a separate start time where their ski erg won't actually record calories and does it automatically. Like 2 seconds in, it clears 3, 2, 1, go. And it gives them their go time.
Yeah.
Now you turn a workout that was very hard to follow and very hard to know what was in, and where the earlier rounds were kind of just warm-ups. And now you made every round look like a race, and every single round is ending with people finishing at the same time. So everybody watching is knowing, oh, when they finish at the end of the pool, that's when they're done. And not a casual observer being like, hold on, wait, like, why is this person not trying here? Or why is it like, why do they have a minute of rest in this interval? Because it's just not really clear how the testing structure is supposed to play out. And then sometimes the announcers will criticize the athletes for being like, oh, well, like they're just, not trying here. Or like, that's an interesting strategy that they're cruising here. And I'm like, well, why shouldn't they game the test?
Yeah.
Like if the only thing that is scored in this is those last 2 things and they know they're going to make it, why should they try? Why should they expend any extra energy? So I think, anyways, I think
why not do 5 rounds for time, 50 meter swim, 20 cow ski, 15 cow ski for girls.
Yeah. I mean, again, that probably would make more sense in that context because they weren't testing, like they put it as an interval test, but it wasn't really an interval. It was kind of like a long warm up. Yeah. It was a long warm up to the AMRAPs, or for the girls. I
like maybe 1 or 2 of the girls didn't make it to the AMRAPs. I don't in the last heat. I don't really remember, but most of the girls were there. All of the guys were there. It's like you just did a buy-in into 2 AMRAPs. So rethink your test, because the interval format just effed with everybody's head.
Yeah.
The other side of that is all of the swim events in the past that have been out in open water have been a nightmare to try and follow and figure out, aside from the person who's in front, which is usually Fikowski and Tia. Like that's all that's all the information you have until they come up out of the water. So we went to the pool, which I'm sure had to be a relatively big investment for them to try and rent out that space for all of that time.
It was awesome.
The whole day long. They had it for all the divisions. It was great. And then you have a test where you can't even take advantage of the fact that they're in the pool to be able to see who's in the lead. Like
little things. This was supposed to be a rant. I didn't want to get too ranty and emotional, but
the solution would be, I think, make it something that's either easily followable from anybody who's there, but also let the athletes know where their race is going to be.
Yeah,
and just make it for time.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question for heck yeah, heck nah.
You have to go first.
Hiller pointed out in a recent YouTube video that athletes who had just been recently popped by HQ during the season are now competing in local comps, and in this case, winning prize money. Heck yeah or heck nah?
Well, heck nah. Does that mean, is it happening? Like heck nah, do I think it's happening, or heck nah?
No. What's your opinion on that? Should it happen?
I would say heck nah. I mean, but this all comes down to sport organization. I feel like CrossFit has been, like in the past, Wadapalooza, which is now like a major off-season competition that a lot of people do, couldn't say that it was a CrossFit competition because it wasn't CrossFit. And then they came out with the licensing agreements where they could license them. I think they need to kind of define like, what is a CrossFit competition? And then like which ones are we saying are CrossFit? Like, hey, this is CrossFit. If they do that, I feel like the drug testing policy for any competition that offers prize money should be relatively uniform.
A local comp.
But so then you're saying it's not a CrossFit comp, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying if you're going to say this is CrossFit at all, but that would be easy,
saying if it's
called a functional fitness test. And
well, then if it's that, I don't care. Like if somebody's just going to that's like going to a local strongman competition and
All right, so say that you created a competition and it's not a CrossFit competition, and then Ricky Garrard 2 years ago comes and says, hey, I want to compete in this. Do you let him compete? He's currently serving his ban for CrossFit. He can't compete for 2 more years inside of that sport, but he says, you're not a CrossFit competition.
And
I'm going to go to
money.
your place and I'm going to take your $5,000 because I know that there's not going to be anybody else there.
That's a good question. You stumped me.
So I would say heck no, and I would say it more from the point of outside of like the or is it USADA that does the testing, drug testing?
I don't think they do it for us.
Well, what happens is the governing body, it trickles down to all of the participating member affiliates. So like if you test positive in weightlifting, then you also can't compete inside of CrossFit and vice versa.
That does happen
right?
now.
Yeah. What I was saying is like, even if the competition lies outside of this group of events, I still think that it comes down to the event organizer, which is probably what Hiller's saying in terms of like,
like the event organizer should say, if you've tested.
Listen, even though I'm not associated with the umbrella of CrossFit related events or USADA sponsored events, sanctioned events.
So if
I still don't want you here because
what if there was no prize money? Same thing. Like what if they were just getting medals like gold medals?
I think the prize money to me would be more of a deal breaker because then I'm trying to explain to the second and third place person there that this person who we know is cheating took your prize money.
Got it. Okay.
They took our prize money.
Heck no.
All right. So those were both topical in our community and kind of CrossFit based. I'm going to have a wild card here. And we're going to end on more of a philosophical type vibe.
Oh, baby.
This one's kind of a bummer for me personally, but let's see where it goes. All right. So I just got bummer news that one of my favorite bands who I own all their vinyls, been to their shows multiple times, hoodies, merch, all that kind of stuff. The band's Neurosis had a member come forward and admit to years of emotional and physical abuse against his wife and kid.
Oh,
right.
He did it.
Yeah. He came out and he was very open and honest. And, he put it all out there, but it's making me feel a way about wanting to even listen to any of it at this point. And like, they're one of my faves. And I'm just like, but then that goes. So my question to you guys, should we view the art and the artist separately? So you could think about things like Cosby and the Cosby Show. Dr. Huxtable didn't do anything bad, but Cosby did. And now it's off the air and just kind of heck or heck off.
You're talking about like, it seems to me to be like a more focused level of cancel culture. Like,
that's what I was thinking.
Do you cancel him inside of your own head?
Well, just,
Or like the band that he's associated with?
Should we separate the art from the artist?
Oh, hold on. So is that the question?
Yeah.
Should we? I would say heck yeah. I think you should. I think there are like I still listen to Michael Jackson songs.
Yeah. I think everybody does.
Yeah.
I haven't met one person when fucking any of those songs come on, they're like, can't do it.
Yeah. I listened to Lance Armstrong talk after, I listened to his podcasts and after he had cheated all those years. Like, I think I'm, even just as a person, I've done some shit in my past that I've hung on to for a really long time without forgiveness and realized humans are faulty. Like we get emotional, we get fired up by things. We can't always see our own biases. We do things without experience. We do things that hurt other people. And artists, I think, are some of the most troubled people that do that. And their art is almost a form for them to do it. So
I did say art, but it could be
it's really anything
of anything.
It's really anything. Like I know on a very small scale, I feel like the things I struggled with in my past almost gave me the motivation and energy to build TTT and have almost unhealthy work habits because of whatever my internal emotional experience are. So I think I'll always, as a human, be a little bit more. So you
could watch the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. Got it.
I mean, not perfectly fine. I think as I watch it, the context changes. Let's say Michael Jackson, for example. I used to just listen to it and not think about anything. I would just feel like it feels good. The music's upbeat. The voice is amazing. It's just
hit a couple hee.
Yeah, it's just crazy and wow, I can't believe somebody can do that with their voice. Now, if I listen to it, I can't believe that all this fucking guy did all this shit, and I'm still listening to the music. That it's so good. But
God level good. That's how you know he's the king of pop right there. Because they didn't give R. Kelly the same treatment.
Yeah, but it's okay. Well, he caused all this fucking pain in a couple people's lives, but you can't say that he didn't bring joy and bring fucking dancing and bring all this other good stuff to people's lives just because of the bad stuff.
So, for instance, when people say I haven't met anyone personally, but I remember at the time and kind of how I'm feeling with this band is right now, I'm not going to go listen to even though I agree with this sentiment, you could separate them. Right now it's just too new and fresh and
raw.
I just don't want to do, it's too raw. And, but there's people who have that argument who's no, never.
Yeah.
And I'm well, what if you found out the guy who created Wi-Fi was kid diddling? You're just going to be oh, never using Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Is that his art?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't have to just be artist.
Yeah.
Creator of something.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's
like, how far are you going to take that down the line? And then how many people, like, for instance, this guy, it's like I was a supporter for years and it was happening. I just didn't know it. So how many people are you supporting now that are terrible,
that are doing
that
it?
You don't know?
Well, that's the thing is I was going to say, I think knowing people that are in that position who have never said anything and might not even admit it to themselves and are getting all this positive rewards from society and all of this shit. I know people that fall into that category. I think that what this guy did, first of all, probably fucked his life up because he used to go to places thinking that he was the man and have fans like you. And now the reaction when he has to go out in public is completely different. And it's probably a hard thing to just live through. And he came out and said it, which means that he's, I'm assuming, trying to make a change. So it's almost like he's making a noble decision. And then on top of making that noble decision of trying to make a change and come forward about shit that he's done to try to make a change, it's like, all right, well, now are you going to, like, you know, kick the man who's already down, who's already trying to make the change? I don't know. That just doesn't seem like a way to live for me philosophically.
Yeah. Adam, heck yeah, heck no.
So what was the question before?
So like, can you separate the creator from what they created?
What I'll say is I think that I'd make the argument that you probably should, because I think that there's a give and take on both sides. Like what Max was saying, there's cons to the lifestyle or the decisions that were made. But I also think that there's a value to what they were able to bring to society on the other side of things. I think the issue for me comes back to the point of, like, somebody like that, if I choose to continue to consume whatever it was, their music, go back and watch their old sports, if it was Lance Armstrong, is that choice to continue to support them also basically telling them that it was okay to do all of that? And I don't think that that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm buying off on the fact that you abuse your family. I'm just saying that I appreciate what it is that you brought to us, but it's also, it's a very human thing to also just be like sensitive about it. Like if he says that and I knew who that was, I would never look at that person the same way again. For sure. It's a very human reaction for me. It's just like,
but that I think is the punishment. I don't think we need to go any farther than that. It's like you're the character that you have, especially in the people that are closest to you or the people that supported you your whole life. That character is the most valuable thing that we have. It's not quantifiable. It's not money. It's not going to be in your bank account. But if you lose that, like, solitary confinement and isolation is a punishment to humans. So now you're like, now everybody who thought they knew you didn't know you. And now they're all going to get to know you and they're not going to like you because of what you did. I don't feel like we need to go any farther. It's like, all right, you've been canceled. Like you might still have money. You still might have fame. You still might have some things that are positive, but you live in a time and space where people know that you did horrible shit and are judging you for it and can't believe that you did it and will never look at you the same. Yeah. I don't know. It's a big wound. Like, why do you need to rip it open any farther by saying, like, never fucking do anything, or you never have your music listened to, or never be on the air? I don't know.
I don't think it's
just not how I am.
For me, it's not that kind of punishment. It's for me, it's like more personally. It's like if I choose not to want to listen to you anymore because I have a very emotional reaction to like what I know about you, then that's my choice. But I'm not going to like go out and like protest that you have to lose your job now as a result of that. That's sort of like I feel like everybody makes their own decision.
Like so right just now, it's just too fresh for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But on these examples,
but you're not canceling him. Right. You're just not consuming it. Right?
Yeah. I guess I wasn't even talking about canceling. I was just talking about internally. Like, should you as a person? But that's a cool conversation to have too. But in these examples, like the band and the Cosby one, it's even weirder because then you bring in, like, think about all the other actors and actresses on that show who were in syndication, and now their art is being shunted.
Yeah, that's
so like this band, it's like there's a whole band.
Impact.
Yeah, like all the other guys, and now it's like they didn't tour and all that. It's like their lives. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, just be careful of the people you surround yourself.
Well, we've kind of went long here, so we are going to move into our Q&A segment.
We got another segment?
But that's okay. Remember, there are no stupid questions, just stupid people.
We're going to do 3. Let's cut it to 2. But at the end of these episodes,
I want to at least hear the third one.
Okay.
And then I can say I don't want to listen.
And then we'll ignore it. We'll tee it up for the next one. So let's do 2 now, and then every episode from here on out, we're going to try to do these. So from a name that I cannot pronounce, Sherry There's no way. All right. They said, if you could have dinner with a CrossFit quote unquote celebrity, who would it be? And what would you say? Let's just go. Who would it be? CrossFit celebrity. Who you picking? I know mine.
How about you start? Because I need to think.
Miko Salo.
Oh, nice one.
That's a good one.
Nice one. Why? What would you say?
Because that's how I got into CrossFit, was following was it 10 or 29? I think it was 2010, right? Don't make me do this.
Yeah, when he won?
No,
Yeah. What year did he
Holmberg
won?
won in 10.
Okay, so 09.
Sailor
yeah, right.
won in 09.
So it was watching that got me all hooked.
Yeah.
No, I agree. That was probably the year that I was like all in. I watched 07 and 08.
Yeah.
I was actually telling Chris I went back and watched the Every Second Counts documentary of 08 again.
I did that like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool format for the games in general. And I thought it like, I forget who I was talking to about it. Oh, I was talking to Mike about John Wellborn, I think.
Oh, because he was in it.
He was in it. And like he was obviously just a complete unique athlete at that
Yeah.
time. And like that format just effed him. But it was
Yeah.
just an interesting
It was the
time.
run that got him. Right?
It was mostly everything.
Yeah. Mostly the fact
the
that
run
he was a
didn't help.
315-pound man.
But it
bear.
was an interesting time in the sport that somebody like that thought that they could be high level and was respected. And like, but you just like, there was just so much contrast with that.
Yeah.
We went completely off board. We were talking about Miko Salo in 09.
Oh yeah. Who is your celebrity be? And what is it? Have lunch with them? Have dinner?
Yeah, basically just
I'm
have dinner
Neil.
with them. Who do you want to hang out
It's
with?
up to you.
Well, I want to have breakfast on the beach.
Breakfast.
Wait, did you pick yours or you're about
I'm
to pick
thinking.
yours?
No, he's like, you go first.
I was still thinking too.
Should this be our question that we don't answer?
we already asked it.
Oh,
man.
shit.
People are waiting.
Yeah. I'm gonna pick Jason Khalipa.
Oh,
Yeah.
why? You got to tell us why.
Well, he's in like the jiu-jitsu space now, so I feel like we'd have something in common. I'd want to hear some things that I'd want to discuss. Like he was one of the golden boys inside of CrossFit, part of the seminar staff. The whole thing happened. He left. Now he's running his own thing. I'm guessing that means he's not part of the CrossFit infrastructure. What's that like? I think there'd be some personal things. I'd like to hear about his training now and what he does, evaluate some of his physical skills. Like, can he do some of the, like, I've seen videos of him for his affiliate doing like barbell specific stuff or very simple stuff, but like how much of can he still handstand walk really well? What's his gymnastics capacity? Is he doing muscle ups? Have those skills, are they still important to him? Does he still think they should be part of the level 1 curriculum? I feel like a lot of times you talk to people and if you're like in the belly of the beast of CrossFit, it can almost feel like blasphemy if somebody's like, for example, I would have an unpopular opinion with them that I don't think the med ball clean should be a foundational movement of anybody's training. And I think it should be removed from the
I think that's a popular opinion.
Okay. Well, it's not popular amongst people that are really high level inside of the CrossFit educational system
just
because it's still there.
Yeah.
And it's never been tested in the open. It's never been tested in the games. It's
Careful what you ask.
Yeah,
That's going to be
never
event
seen
one of
it.
the TTT competition.
Yeah, fuck it. 500 per time. Let's see how foundational this shit is.
I got you.
Yeah,
That's a good pick.
So I would like to I'd like to know and know if he has friends that are still in there that are part of seminar staff. If he ever talks to them, if there's people that are willing to change the curriculum. Of, he probably have a lot of interesting gossip to share.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
I've hung out with him once.
Oh, you have? Yeah.
Adam?
Honestly, I think I'd pick Fraser.
That's a good one.
You didn't hang out with him when he was here?
He shot me.
Or this
down
is your
once.
dinner?
No, I wasn't here when he came with the Buttery Bros.
Yeah.
I forget where I was. It might have been in the summer one time.
Yeah.
I think it would be less about like his rise and dominance as an athlete and more about his transition into coach. I think that one of the things that I've always considered to be a challenge for people who are high level athletes in the sport is to then take that and replicate that into their coaching. And so I'd want to discuss like, what are the unique challenges that you find when you try and take all of the things that worked for you and you try and apply them to somebody else? Is it just like a cut and paste, or is it like, all right, he works with Mal and Jason and
I think that's it.
maybe Jake Marconi. I think that is still he's a semifinal level athlete, even though he's a coach there. There's a unique set of challenges there as a coach that I'd be interested to talk about.
Yeah.
Because certain ways that you approach a competition, certain ways that you approach a workout, certain ways that you like to think about a movement, maybe that only applies to you. Maybe you can't take that and apply that to somebody else. I know that I've had that happen to me in the past. Like how I like to think about handstand walking is a little bit different than how Mia likes to think about it. It's way different than how Alexis thinks about it. And so solving those issues, I think, is something that I assume that he's coming up against.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear like how he's problem solving that.
Yeah. First of all, I've been shot down by him before because after he left here, I was, I reached out to Jake Marconi because Jake was, I guess, a fan of the podcast, and we've had good conversations at the games. And I found out he was getting hired by them. And I was like, I'd love to brainstorm. Like, I don't feel like there's that many opportunities. I've been coaching for a while. I've obviously been studying, like basically I was studying Matt to figure out anything that he put out or anything that he could do to figure out what it would take to beat him. Like, so he was a main point of interest and focal point for me as a casual observer, or not as an intimate observer of the sport for a while. And it was just, I thought it'd be interesting to talk. So I reached out to Jake, and then I was like, hey, I'll come up there, or, you know, pay for consulting or whatever. And then just never got a response. So you probably won't get that conversation.
I assume that it's still hypothetical, that I'm not actually going to sit down with him.
Yeah. But I do think that that's interesting because Mal seems to be kind of a very similar athlete profile to him. Like, first games, really successful, pretty close. Now she took second. She's a shorter athlete relative to the field. He was a shorter athlete relative to the field. She's obviously fully committed. So there's a lot of similarities there. Jason is a way different beast.
Very different
He's fucking
athlete.
tall. He's big. His body proportions are different. Is the volume?
I call him Mock Lesnar.
Like a little... He does kind of Mock Lesnar.
Just think about it.
Nice. That was good.
It was really
quick.
good.
Yeah. So that'd be a cool topic.
I think it's a unique set of challenges to try and compete and dominate as an athlete, and then try and compete and dominate as a coach. And I'd just be interested to have that conversation and think about how he's trying to solve that problem. Because he's said in the past that he is not, like, he's not shy about basically picking and choosing the kind of athlete that he works with. But
I mean, if you want to be dominant, you have to, because they need a certain level of talent to even be close.
Yeah. I just don't know. Like, is it always going to be a stable of just 2 to 3 athletes? Is he going to extend to 10? If it gets to 10, then he's got 10 different avatars of athletes he's got to try and communicate with.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. He's going to be like, fuck, I quit coaching after talking to you.
All right, let's move on to our last question. So Least Lifts wants to know, how important do you think the out of the gym stuff is? Sleep, social, food, etc.
Very.
Yes.
That's it.
I think we have gone a little long. So.
I mean, I think it is probably more important for everybody listening than what you do in the gym, based on what I've observed. People that are underfed, stressed, shitty jobs.
And how should someone take that when they hear you say that? That you say, I think it's more important. And then my, as a listener, my gut response might be like, oh, that's cool. You think it's more important. What am I supposed to do with that?
Well, think about how you approach the gym. Think about how you approach the gym. You're probably one of the most dedicated trainees here.
Consistent.
I would say, like, just super consistent. But you log your workouts, you plan them ahead of time. How many people actually do that with some of the other lifestyle stuff? How many people track their sleep? How many people track their stress levels over time? What are the trends with their nutrition intake like? And then how that actually impacts all the other stuff. Track it. Treat it the same way that you would a gym. If you're trying to improve something over time, first you have to start with measuring it. And I think that stuff in the gym is easily quantifiable, and that's why people can wrap their heads around it. And we create software to track things. The other stuff is just like, it tends to be arbitrary. I kind of slept okay last night. Or I feel like crap today. Maybe I underate yesterday. People just don't know. But if you're trying to assign importance to it and you're trying to change it over time, start by tracking it.
Was your question, what if they don't assign importance to it? Or what? Or you were saying, if I said that, and you were a listener.
No, I think he answered it. Like, how am I supposed to?
Like, what's the practical?
Like, okay, now that you're saying that this is the most important, and I respect you guys. Like, what's my next step? And I think that was good.
I think it's
just,
like
it's fluffy to say. The stuff outside the gym matters, but make it not fluffy.
Yeah, the thing is, if you look like, say you're modeling yourself out of people who are successful on the front of high level athletics, and you watch a day in the life, you're always going to see a couple different things. You're always going to see them prioritizing. A ton of
ads for all the products they represent.
That's one. Number two is you're going to see them talking about the importance of their sleep schedule and their routines and rhythms. And a lot of them are like very structured people in general. Generally, the people that are like, they have night lives and party lives and do other stuff, and they're not on a very clear, I get up and I'm here every day of training, and this is when I train, and this is what my top focus is. Like, those are outliers in any athletic community at every level. So you know that sleep and rhythms are important. You know that they're going to take care of their food. All of them weigh and measure. They have good quality stuff.
Or have weighed and measured.
They have some sort of understanding of their intake and their hydration and all of that. They generally will be doing some sort of movement training stuff, whether it's accessory work or warm-ups or stretching, or have a PT or a chiro that they're going into these things. And they're doing that stuff as religiously and daily as they are their training. So it's like, you're never going to see a video where it's just them, or if you get a day in the life and it's kind of a real life where it's only that they're training. Yeah. Like those other things are the thing that support the thing. Yeah. So I think the better way to think of it is it's all the same. It's like, you want to get results, train yourself in the gym with a certain standard, and then recover yourself with that same standard outside of the gym, because the training doesn't consistently happen. If this recovery isn't happening, you just end up breaking yourself.
And if I go to Adam's point, you said start tracking. And if I go from 0 to 60, meaning I'm not tracking any of that stuff right now, would I change any of my training to account for the fact that I'm going to be adding in all these other habits, or are those small enough where it's just not keep rocking what you're doing?
Well,
you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think where it starts usually is you're not necessarily trying to change the habit initially. First, you need to figure out where the baseline is. Like, where are you at right now with your sleep? Where is your nutrition at?
Yeah, self-awareness.
It's just all it is right now is just getting a picture of where you're at. And then over time, what you do is you pick 1 or 2 of those low-hanging pieces of fruit, and then you try and attack that at a time. So it's not just like throwing the kitchen sink at all of the problems that you found.
Yeah.
It's basically saying, all right, where is the best return on investment for what I can do? Maybe it is just my sleep for now. Maybe it is my hydration. Maybe it is my stress and decompressing late at night.
Have y'all found that there's one that sticks out, aggregate all the athletes use coach, that a common low-hanging fruit in that department?
In the CrossFit world?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I think that if you can improve your sleep duration and quality, that's probably the best thing that you can probably do.
Yeah. I would say that would probably be one if there were really dysfunctional sleepers, but a close second I would say be breath awareness / concentration based meditations, anything that downregulates people. I think CrossFit is a stimulating activity. Yep. There's a lot of adrenaline. You're doing it in environments where there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of structural load. There's a lot of cardiac load. It's a intense experience for most people. And people's jobs are high strung, and then they go from that with all that shit in their body to sometimes sit down. And like, I think the calming side of it, we've talked about it in podcasts, and what I would call working out or working in, where you go inward, relax, breathe, stretch, meditate, play with contrast baths, and just learn to chill. I feel like good CrossFitters oftentimes have no chill.
I think it's probably those two in conjunction almost.
Yeah.
Like being able to downregulate at night with the tools that you said allows you to then sleep better and hopefully recover better.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what an episode. Thanks, boys.
Is that the longest ever?
No, it's just under 2 hours.
How long is it?
Just under 2 hours.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Let us know if you want us to go longer.